So what are grid constraints and curtailment? You and I have an insatiable appetite for electricity. Come with me and we'll look at the issues relative to wind farms and the communities that they serve. This is the Windfarm Guy. Hi, this is Dennis Stout and thank you for joining me for this episode of the Windfarm Guy. The Texas High Plains region, which covers 41 counties in the Texas Panhandle and West Texas, is home to more than 11,000 wind turbines, the most of any area in the state. And let me remind you, Texas leads the country. This region could generate enough wind energy to power at least 9 million homes. Experts say the additional energy could help provide much needed stability to the electric grid during high energy demand summers and can even lower the power bills of Texans in other parts of the state. But a significant portion of the electricity produced in West Texas stays there for one simple reason: it can't be moved elsewhere. Despite the growing development of wind energy production in Texas, the state's transmission network is constrained and would need significant infrastructure upgrades to help ship out that energy produced in that region. Grid constraint means that there is too much energy being generated for the electricity grid to manage. It is the constant job of grid operators and regional transmission operators to balance power generation with the consumer demand. If there's not enough demand to absorb the electricity being transmitted on the network, then the network will become overloaded and generators will be forced to disconnect. And yes, they actually do tell wind generators to stop generating electricity. This is referred to as curtailment. Several years ago, the CREZ build-out helped this, but the grid is still antiquated and anemic relative to demand of the state. Obviously, this curtailment has a financial impact on the business of wind generators, as this makes them lose revenue. The curtailment of energy generation is why you may see wind turbines standing idle on a windy day. More and more of our world depends on electricity, and that electricity demand is expected to balloon in coming decades. Meeting this demand will require much more renewable energy capacity to be rolled out, which will of course put a greater strain on the aging transmission and distribution network. Renewable energy developers will be required to pay hefty grid reinforcement costs to accommodate the clean generation equipment, which could quickly make an otherwise viable project too expensive to make financial sense. That goes for any form of electricity generation. As it's put on the system, upgrades have to be made. Wind energy is the cheapest form of new electricity generation today, and wind helps keep the power market prices low as other generators are in competition to sell their electricity. John Hensley, Vice President for Research and Analytics at the American Clean Power Association, said, "We're at a moment when wind is at its peak production profile. But we see a lot of wind energy being curtailed or congested and not able to flow through to some of the higher population areas, which is a loss for the ratepayers and a loss for those energy consumers who now have to either face conserving energy or paying more for the energy they do use because they don't have access to this low-cost wind resource." And when the rest of the state is asked to conserve energy to help stabilize the grid, the High Plains has to turn off turbines to limit wind production it doesn't need. In recent times, Texans have had a few energy scares amid scorching temperatures with high energy demands to keep homes cool, or other times when temperatures are unusually cold. The energy supply issues have hit Texans' wallets as well. Nearly half of Texas's electricity is generated at power plants that run on the state's most dominant energy source, natural gas. And those natural gas prices have increased more than 200-fold, causing elevated home utility bills. Meanwhile, wind farms across the state account for nearly 21% of the state's power generation. Statewide, Texas produces more than 1/4 of the nation's wind-powered electric generation. Wind turbines do not need fuel to run. Wind energy is one of the lowest priced energy sources because it is sold at fixed prices. Texans who get their energy from wind farms in the high plains usually pay less for electricity than people in other areas of the state. But with the price of natural gas increasing, areas where wind energy is not accessible have to depend on electricity that costs more. Other electricity generation sources are more expensive than what customers would have gotten from the wind generators had they been able to move that electricity. That is the definition of transmission congestion. There's no room on the transmission lines, so you can't move the cheaper electricity through the grid. And if you can't get your product to market, you can't sell it. So, we need more transmission so we're able to move more energy, and Texas is growing by leaps and bounds. The Texas grid needs to grow with it. If you like what we've discussed today, please click like and subscribe below. If you have thoughts or want me to address a particular topic relative to wind farms, please also leave me a comment. Texas has prime real estate for harnessing wind power because it's open plains and farmers and ranchers can put turbines on their land and enjoy that passive revenue stream. This has led to a boom in wind farms, even with transmission issues. Since 2010, wind energy generation in Texas has increased by 15%. Recently, the Biden administration announced the Gulf of Mexico's first offshore wind farms will be developed off the coast of Texas and Louisiana, and will produce enough energy to power around 3 million homes. One of the concerns often brought up with wind and solar farms is that they may not be able to produce enough energy to meet the state's needs all of the time. This is where battery storage facilities come in. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the capacity of utility-scale batteries tripled in 2021 and can now store up to 4.6 gigawatts of energy. Texas has quickly been developing storage projects. In 2011, Texas had only 5 megawatts of battery storage capacity. By 2020, that had ballooned to over 323 megawatts. Amazing growth. Yeah, storage technology can help, but transmission is still the big factor to consider. This is Dennis Stout, and I'm the Windfarm Guy. Thank you for watching. Working together, we can make good energy decisions and save our planet. I am the Windfarm Guy.